Hello, my name is Paul Mitchell, and this is my persuasive speech. The topic is education. I know it's a no-brainer. Everybody should be involved in, their not only their own education but their kids' education. Now that I'm a new father, I'm a little more involved in a lot of the education stuff and what it does, what it needs to be for my kid. I've done a lot of research on education, and it kind of ties in with a lot of other issues with our society that we have today. Like education ties in huge with the prison system. Um, Not just that, but the job market, uh, many other things. But the biggest one is it directly affects people's education and what they can do for jobs. So some people turn to crime, a lot of crime, and I'm part of this blog. I got this guy named Lenny I talk to a lot, and he wrote some blog that I'm gonna read to you. He wrote, "The road to becoming a member of the present 334,000 incarcerated community in the state begins with the failure of our education and school districts. It's their job to form students with enough skills to make them productive members of society. It presently costs his state, which is California, $73,000 a year to deal with young people in the juvenile justice system. Um, he said we can educate for far less than that if we stop doing the same failed public education policy while unrealistically expecting different results. Um, the largest factor in the present deficit nightmare that is California finds itself has to do with the cost of criminal justice system and the $8 billion judgment that the federal government has against California for the illegal conditions it continues to maintain. Education is far cheaper. It creates taxpayers and lessens gangs and the costly crime that those not socialized continue to cost this society." And he has a website that you can go to for education. Unfortunately, it's for California, so I'm really not gonna, throw it out there. And he thinks that it's a good approach to, definitely start fixing education once and for all in his state. I did some research. I couldn't really, there's a few here, but I didn't. I don't have them. I also went on another website called the Bureau of Justice Statistics, and it just continually goes on and on and on about the education and how more than like 95% of the people that are incarcerated don't even have a high school diploma or GED. They drop out. And it goes on. Here is some more education. You know, locally, I did some research on private schools, and for pre-K, for like my son's age, cost around $3,000, $3,000 to $5,000 a year. And it might sound a lot, but with our current education system, that's a huge failure. And I don't blame education for being a failure. I blame our state, our country, because I call it the ant effect. You have one good worker ant. Unfortunately, that one good worker ant has to have somebody to watch them, somebody to counsel them, someone to be their boss, someone to watch their production, someone to, you know. So you got 5, 6 people hired to watch the ant, which in this case we'll just call the ant a teacher. So you have about 50, 60 teachers. Imagine how many people are watching them. You have the principal, you have a whole entire education system, which is all government, who get money, who get paid by the taxpayers to form curriculum, to get books, funding, all this craziness, and and it just goes on and on and on. How many people are involved, have their pockets in education? So it's no wonder that our education is a failing system. Not only that, but our government, because they're always getting their hands into things they shouldn't be into. Unfortunately, education they should be, but they just don't know how to get it right, I guess. And private schools do, because they have smaller classes, better education, and unfortunately, a lot of people that aren't educated, put a lot of burden on the taxpayers because it'd be cheaper to send them to school, private school, their whole life than it would be to lock them up. And I wish, my personal opinion would be, send every child, every kid, fortunate or not fortunate, taxpayers need to pay for education, private education, if possible, for everyone that falls behind. Because they had this law, No Child Left Behind law, which I find ridiculous because that puts people, 4 or 5 grades behind themselves by the time they're in 8th grade, and they don't know what's going on, so they're doomed to fail. They are just set up to fail. So if you had a program or some private type of thing where you could move the students and give them a better education and move them up to a point where they should be, then wonderful. And I wouldn't mind paying it myself, because I'd rather pay for that than to be sitting in a jail cell, eating food, being stupid, and then getting out and doing it all over again, or having babies that grow up and do the same thing they do. Um, Prison on an average costs about $32,000 to $34,000 a year, depending what prison it is, and also they're ran by private companies. So this taxpayer money, a lot of it's going to private companies, unfortunately. And I did some numbers here. It looks like prison for 20 years. I know it's a long time, but I just did an average for 20 years. It costs between $640,000 up to $800,000, depending on the prisoner's health and what state they're locked up in. In school, I did some numbers for that too. I know the average cost for college is a little more, but if you took a kid private school from kindergarten, which I just told you a few minutes ago was about 3,000, 3,000 all the way through up to middle school. And once they hit high school, it cost about 6,000 a year for private school, which these schools are small enough to keep these kids in line, to keep them educated and on track. And I know the regular schools have this thing called the track system, which is ridiculous because if you don't take certain classes, you're not going anywhere. But if you're not educated enough to stay in those tracks, or you're just having difficulty because it's too much and too much to learn, which I understand, then you're doomed. You're not going to college. They all say, oh, you're not going to make it, or you're off your track, so you're not on the right track to go to college. I don't think it's true. I think if they just had the correct education and they weren't in a state, regular, public school, they'd have a better chance. And school for 20 years cost for private school is $130,000. That's 20 years. So you do the math. 10 years, 12 years. 12 years is for high school. That's 8 more years that you had to do something else. I mean, you could go to college. You can get an AA at least, get your associates, and so that's enough money to have left over. But just think about this: even if you were to pay for college, you know, this school for 20 years is $130,000. That's at the $6,500 mark for 20 years, and that's amazing. I'd rather pay that, actually a little more if we could, just to send them to college too. And not only that, but U.S. would have the most educated people there are around. As of right now, I did some statistics, and it's kind of sad that America thinks they're the smartest nation. We think we're smart because we're cocky. We're very arrogant, people. And I looked at a lot of the other education systems in other countries, and we fall way behind actually. And I did some more searching, and by like 10 years from now, there's about 5,200 jobs that are going to be opening up that unfortunately are going to be outsourced to other countries because of we don't have people educated enough to do them, like working in nuclear plants, NASA, um, a lot of them, a lot of jobs that you just need education for. And in conclusion, my speech is all about education, and people need to get involved, not just in their kids' lives or their own education, but in the public system. And I hope it changes. Thank you.